Some people live on the front lines of the struggle between good and evil. Others, like us, bear witness. I'm Therese Apel. You may know me from the cases I've covered as a lifelong crime reporter and the stories I've told about law enforcement and crime across Mississippi. Along with my co-hosts, Nicole Crowell and Amanda Johansson, we've seen both the best and the worst of human nature. We believe there's no greater responsibility than telling the stories of the men and women who pursue the truth, who hunt the monsters, who speak for the victims, and who piece together some of the most significant investigations of our time. Welcome to Investigation Homicide.
What they do is they develop software for police departments and dispatchers, and that's what we do. And our why is Deputy William Durr. And William Durr gave his life to protect others. And so what we try to do is make sure that if I can provide some level of officer safety, that's all that matters to us. I am currently...
While on the force, I learned that an officer is only as good as his team and the gear that he carries. Ultimately, that is what helped me make the decision to supply and support the demands that the officers need.
From uniforms to upfitting service vehicles, our family strives to connect people with the resources they need. From enforcing the law, fighting fires, or simply protecting the ones they love. At the Southern Connection Police Supplies, our family is here.
Hey everybody, welcome to Investigation Homicide. I'm Therese Apel. That was our sponsors, for those of you who might be listening. If we're having technical difficulties. That happens from time to time. We don't have sound. But ADSI and Southern Connection are two great companies, and they sponsor us. They make this podcast possible, and they're absolutely our biggest supporters, and we are very grateful for that. So if you happen to stop by Southern Connection, tell them that you heard about them on our podcast. If you work with ADSI, let Mike know that you appreciate him making this possible. So thank you for joining us today. I'm Therese Apel. I've got Sara Perkins-Ricks with me.
Hey.
And we are saying that because I've just always called her Sara Perkins because that's who I know, but her husband, Jordan Ricks, is one of our favorites, and we want to make sure and give him credit too.
Yes, we have to give Jordan credit.
Yeah. He writes us a really good question every week.
He does. He should be listening, I hope.
Good.
Now.
Good deal.
Yes. Oh, I had something. I normally don't have anything at the very beginning of the podcast because I get stage fright. But I wanted to share something cool that happened at the police department this week.
Great.
I was on Madison Moms group, which is just a bunch of Madison moms from Madison County all in a group, and this lady had posted on there about how her friend had a birthday, and all she asked for was all her friends to come over to make birthday cake kits for people that couldn't have a birthday, or kids, moms struggling, stuff like that. Well, they had some left over, and they brought them all to the blessing box at the police department.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And our blessing box is so utilized. I don't think that a lot of people realize it, but every day people come and clean it out. So it was just a neat little project that they did, and they made it to where they don't have to have eggs or oil. They did a soda in there instead, but it had birthday candles, the cake mix, the icing, and then some stuff to celebrate the birthdays. I thought that was just such an awesome way for them to celebrate a birthday, but give back to the community. And how neat is it that people are going to have birthday cakes?
Yeah, people that might not actually have it otherwise.
It just made my week, in a week that kind of was busy and all over the place, and just kind of the news is terrible to look at when people just doing good things like that. I love it. That makes me happy.
I might call you about that for a story later.
Okay. So I posted it's been posted on the Ridgeland Facebook page, so you can see it, and everybody involved in it. Both of the ladies' names were Susan. I can't remember.
Well, then, yeah, we're going to do a story on that on Dark Horse Press. So tonight we're excited because we have a special guest with us. He's been here before, but we're always so excited to have Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Herzog here from Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. Jimmy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. We love knowing that you're here because I know how busy your schedule is, and that time is just absolutely, especially recently, it's really hard to come by. So thank you for being here. And I guess last time you were here, you did tell us a little bit about your career, but kind of give us the bullet points again for the people who maybe this is the first time they're seeing you.
Yeah, bullet points. I started out in 1994 as a state trooper, and actually, during the course of that, I was on SWAT. I was a training officer, an FTO. I was also a training officer at the academy, the MHB Academy. So I did that for 5 years, and I was fortunate enough to be promoted into investigation after the 5 year mark. So I've practically spent my entire career in investigation. And during the course of that, I've served shortly after 9/11 with the FBI task force. So I did that for a significant period of time. And then I spent the majority of my career in the Hattiesburg area, which is considered Troop J. It covers 9 counties in that particular area of Hattiesburg. And then in 2012, I came back to the Jackson area and headquarters and took over the Special Operations, the Major Crime Unit, where the course of that was handling the Amber Alerts and Silver Alerts, Endangered Missing Child Alerts. And from there, I was promoted as a deputy director with MBI, and I served that for a number of years. And then I retired, and actually took another position with the Department of Agriculture. And I did that for approximately a year and a half. And then, fortunately, and I'm very honored, I was asked to return back to MBI and lead MBI. So it's been quite an honor. MBI, we have some great people, we have some great agents, and we have some fantastic support staff. So it's an honor to serve on their behalf and also serve in the protection of the citizens of Mississippi. So, yeah.
Well, and when they announced that, of course, I hated to see Charles Haynes go, but of course he
Yes.
went to be the colonel over MHP for a while. And then when you were announced, that was so exciting for me because I've seen you work and I know how much you care about what you're doing. You care about the investigations. We were just talking, for those of you that follow this podcast because you followed my career, we were just talking about how both of us are dear friends of Tim Douglas, the MBI agent who honestly was, I mean, he was a big part of my career. And so we'll dedicate this episode to his memory. So, all right, Jimmy. So we're here to talk about this one particular case that you worked that at the time was it's still a major case in Mississippi history. It had a
Yeah,
whole lot of
yeah.
twists and turns. And I think the thing that caught my attention was when you said she was a realtor. The first thing I thought is you hear of stories where realtors are attacked while showing houses, but that wasn't the case
Right.
here.
No, this was a little bit different. You want me to start from the beginning when I was
Yeah,
notified?
tell us,
Yeah.
what did you
This
hear?
story is actually about Janell Hatton. Janell Hatton was murdered in Marion County, and it was a very, very tragic, terrible. It was just a terrible situation. But I happened to be on call on October the 30th, 2004, which is a Saturday, and that was Halloween Eve of all times. So, kids would have been actually going to homes during this time period because, typically Halloween is not done on Sunday, and Halloween was on this particular Sunday. So, myself and another agent, Eric Johnson has since retired. He's now an ag theft investigator with the Department of Agriculture, but he worked the Hattiesburg area with me, and I was on call. We were actually conducting another investigation on this particular day. We'd been working another case, a cold case, for about 2 days. And I happened to be on call, so we're at this particular location where we're working this investigation, and then Marion County actually contacts me directly. I had a very good relationship with Marion County because we had worked we had a great relationship, so they typically would just call me directly versus just calling MHB dispatch or the dispatchers to notify me. And said, "Hey, Herzog, are you on call?" I said, "I happen to be on call." And they said, "Look, we have a situation. We have a residential home where we have a 63-year-old female that is missing. The husband has come home. He went shopping at the Walmart and Sam's in Hattiesburg, and when he came home, he actually came home initially. Well, I'll get to that. But anyway, That's what they told me at that particular point. So there was evidence of foul play. However, Janell was nowhere to be found. So Eric and I responded and went to the scene. And obviously, the first thing you want to do, you want to try to learn victimology of the actual victim. And then number one was talking to the husband. The husband was there. We were, it was mass chaos at this point. So I remember when I arrived on scene, I remember seeing the front door open. There was a circular driveway in the front portion of the home. And I remember seeing the front door open. There was change, money change, scattered all over the place. It was scattered on the ground, scattered in the residence. Also, there was a slipper in the driveway, and then there was also a slipper on the stairway leading from the front door to the driveway. Also, the doormat that you typically would wipe your feet, it was also on partially in the driveway and partially on the steps. So there was blood evidence inside the residence. So we backed out at that point and activated our crime scene unit to actually forensically start examining the scene.
And in press release words, that is signs of a struggle.
Absolutely. Signs of a struggle, and then signs of foul play. Foul play was definitely involved. So
did she have a vehicle, or like was there a vehicle still at the house, or was it missing, or did she not have one?
She had a vehicle, but she was actually at home during this time period. And what we found, so what I did first, Eric stayed back and monitored the crime scene, so protected the integrity of the crime scene. So what I did, I actually approached the husband. The husband was in his 60s at the time, and obviously he was very distraught. So I wanted to get him away from the scene where I could actually talk to him. So we left, and and typically you always look at the husband first as well, right? You look at family members and you start branching outward. Well, it was pretty obvious when he was in the vehicle with me when we were driving to the Marion County Sheriff's Office that he did not do this. There is no way that he did that. And there was no indication of any type of markings or anything on his body at this particular point. So we arrive at the sheriff's department, and again, keep in mind, he's very, very distraught. I mean, his wife is missing. There's indication of foul play. There's indication that she's been hurt or, even possibly dead at this point. So when talking to the husband, he tells me that he came home, and very common for him to do so. So he comes home, he sees a white Camaro parked in the circular driveway. Well, it was not uncommon for a vehicle to be at the residence because Janell Hatton, 63-year-old female, was a very well thought of real estate agent in the Marion County area. So she had multiple homes that she had sold, and then also she had some rental property also. So it was not uncommon for people to come to her house and pay the rent or whatnot. So he didn't think anything of it. So when he comes home, he sees this white Camaro parked in this circular driveway. Well, he continues on. He thought nothing of it. So he starts taking groceries out of his vehicle and placing them in the carport area, which he had like a deep freeze and a refrigerator. So he's placing items in there. So then from that point, he leaves. He leaves and he goes next door where his mother lived. So he began delivering groceries to her. Well, when he was leaving his mother's house and coming back home, he saw that white Camaro parked on the side of the road, just parked stationary. And then, of course, he's coming home. He's like, "That's odd. That was the white Camaro that was at my residence." So he continued on to the house, and then at that point, when he walked in the house, that's when he saw the evidence that something had taken place.
That's got to be a weird feeling for him to know that they were in the house while he was unloading the groceries.
Very much so. Very
Did
much
he
so.
hear anything?
No, he didn't think anything of it. He heard nothing. And there's later that we can talk about is what they told me, because they actually knew that he
That he
had
was
come home.
there.
So they were waiting for him to come inside the house because their plans, they were going to kill him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's chilling when you think about the fact that that could have been if he had only gotten the groceries for his family and not gone to his
Very
mother's.
much so. Very
Amazing.
much so.
Well, and also, that's a pretty suspicious story, like if when you're just talking to the husband, but you said with his demeanor, you knew he hadn't done it. But we look at a lot of other times that this has happened, and he's like, he went to his mom's house while
Yeah.
this was happening. Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah,
So
it was
that's
obvious.
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he was hysterical. I mean, it
Yeah.
was and there was no indication of any type of evidence on him that no blood spatter. I mean, nothing on his body to indicate that he was involved in any type of struggle. But it was his demeanor. It was very obvious that he was not involved in this.
Can I ask how? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I ask how much blood was at the scene?
It was quite a bit. It was gunshot. It was gunshot wounds. So there was blood evidence in the kitchen area. Then there was blood evidence in the den. The den was connected to the kitchen. Then there was blood droplets leading to the driveway.
So the spatter, could y'all tell from what you were looking at that it was going to be gunshot wounds?
At that point, it was a strong indication that it was in fact gunshot.
And what I was going to say a minute ago, just kind of to touch on what you were both alluding to, the fact that he was hysterical. We see on a lot of the crime shows that our listeners watch, you see people acting hysterical, and you can see the act right away. You can tell.
Right.
But I always
right.
say the truth has a sound. And you guys knew from even just feeling his energy that he wasn't acting.
Absolutely. Which, I mean, he had an alibi. I mean, he was at, I mean, the time period that we were talking about, there was no way that he could have done something like this to this extreme, because it was obvious that Janell was actually taken away from that particular area. But at this point, we had no idea if Janell was alive or dead. So at this point, we have no idea what the MO is. We have no idea. All we know is there's a white Camaro that was parked in the driveway area. So we started running records within the Marion County area, and we had 5 or 6 white Camaros. And then during this time period, Stephen Kirkley, his name popped up. So we're trying to make a connection at that point. So Stephen Kirkley, we realized that Stephen Kirkley and his wife Adina had previously rented a home from Janell, rented a rental property from Janell, and they destroyed her house. I mean, it was just terrible. So it was so bad, Janell actually took them to court and actually won. Well, from that point, they obviously couldn't afford to pay for the damage that they caused at her residence. So Janell was so sweet, she allowed Adina, Stephen Kirkley's wife, to start cleaning her office at her office in Columbia, her real estate office. So from there, we found out that Adina then she began cleaning her home as well. So that was the connection. So at this point, we're thinking about Stephen Kirkley. So we're trying to find Stephen Kirkley and identify and see what his whereabouts and what, where he is and what may have caused all this.
What's the breakthrough? When do you find out that Stephen Kirkley is definitely who you're looking for, and where do you find it?
We actually we had that crime scene at that point. So the crime scene unit, they're actually processing the scene. So Eric and I, and now it's very, very late in the evening, because this was daytime on a Saturday. So now we're talking about late hours, early Sunday morning, late Saturday night. So I'm talking to Eric, Agent Johnson at the time, and we start talking about, what could have caused this? And we're looking for Kirkley also. We have a bolo out for Kirkley, and we can't find him anywhere. So we make one more walkthrough through the crime scene. And then towards the back portion of the crime scene, in the back hallway, we actually find a hatchet and a checkbook in the hallway on the floor, neatly stacked on top of each other. So from that point, Eric and I picked up the checkbook, and it was Stephen Kirkley. It was his checkbook. So now it's definitely an extensive manhunt looking for Kirkley. We can't find Kirkley anywhere. We can't find his wife anywhere. So we actually went to a location that he was known to hang out, a different area of Marion County. So we actually go to this location, me, Eric, and the Marion County Sheriff's Office. We knock on the door, and this individual comes out, and he happens to be on parole out of Louisiana. He's been drinking at this point. So he was obviously concerned about violating his parole. So we started asking him, where is Kirkley? And initially he said, Kirkley's not here. Like, where is Kirkley? And finally he said that Kirkley had actually pulled his white Camaro into the barn. There was a barn probably 50 to 70 yards behind the residence. He said that he was in that barn for about 6 hours. So Eric, myself, the individual, and the Marion County Sheriff's Office, we go to this barn. We go in the barn, and the subject, he says, the individual says, that's funny, that horse stall, there wasn't trash in that horse stall day before yesterday. That's very odd. And Eric walks into the horse stall, and by accident, he kicks a beer can that was in the horse stall, and we find Janell. Yeah. We find her. She was partially buried, deceased.
And that kind of, I guess you already had a manhunt going, but that had to kick it into high gear at that
Extensive
point.
now. Yeah, it's I mean, it's drop what you're doing, try to find Kirkley. So we can't find him anywhere. And then later we end up locating Adina Kirkley. So Eric and I started interviewing Adina. And by talking to her, we made some remarks to her during the interrogation. You know, it went from an interview to an interrogation. And she told us that this was a plan with her, Kirkley, a guy named Keith Magee, and two individuals by the last name of Dixon. They actually planned this about 3 days before. And then what had happened, she said that Stephen Kirkley came with her about a year before this happened, while she was cleaning up Janell's residence. And there was a Kentwood jug, you know, like we have Kentwood water, was filled up with coins. So he noticed that, and he talked about that. And he literally talked about that for a year, that he wanted those coins. So that was the motive behind all of it. So she lost her life over $3,200 worth of coins in a Kentwood water jug.
Wow.
So she confesses, and then at this point, we're still looking for Kirkley, and then Kirkley is located in Bogalusa, Louisiana, along with Michael Dixon. And he's in his white Camaro, and Bogalusa PD and Louisiana State Police, it's a brief pursuit. They get him stopped, and they take him into custody along with Shoemake. So, the other individual. So at that point, Eric Johnson actually goes over to Louisiana because, obviously he has to be brought back to Mississippi. So Eric at this point, he's at the jail in Bogalusa, and he's actually talking to Kirkley. And Kirkley is picking on his hands at this particular moment after Eric reads his Miranda rights to him. And then after he agreed to talk to him, he's still picking on his hands. And Eric actually asked him, he said, you can't get it off your hands, can you? And Kirkley looked up at Eric and he said, found my checkbook.
Wow.
That was his remark. So I come into play with Eric a couple hours later at Marion County Sheriff's Office, and we start talking to Kirkley. And Kirkley is more forthcoming, actually, than any of the others. And he tells us everything. And then, of course, he implicates the same people that Adina, his wife, actually implicated. So everything's corroborated at this point. And then we have to locate Keith Magee, because Kirkley tells us that Keith Magee was actually with him during the course of this murder. But what Kirkley actually said was that brought the hatchet. The hatchet was going to be used for decapitation purposes. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, evidence, man. I need to get evidence. So that was his intention. He was actually planning on decapitating her and taking the head with him and leaving her body. That was his plans. So, but then at that point, he sees Keith Magee. I'll even back up. Kirkley walks to the front door, okay? Rings the doorbell. Knocks on the door, rings the doorbell. Janell answers the door. He has his checkbook in his hand. He says, "Hey, Miss Janell, I'm Stephen Kirkley. You remember me, Adina's husband?" "Oh, yeah, come in." So she comes in. He comes inside the residence with her. She said, "Would you like some sweet tea or anything?" He's like, "Yeah, I would love that." So they walk through the den, and then again, the den, in that corner, you have those the coins in the Kentwood water jug. So he goes to the bar area of the kitchen. He has his gun in his waistband. Keith Magee is actually waiting in the white Camaro for the heads up for him, all clear to come inside the house. When Janell turns around, he actually shoots her multiple times. She's still alive at this point. So after she falls, he walks to the door. He motions to Keith Magee to actually come inside. Keith Magee comes inside. Then at that point, Keith has the hatchet with him, okay? So they begin getting the change, picking up the change. Change is dropping everywhere because they're trying to do this very, very fast, obviously.
And those things are heavy.
Yeah, so very heavy. So they're doing that, and at this point, they're at the doorway, and then that's when Mr. Hatton comes home. So they close the door, and they wait. And then they're talking amongst themselves, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And I asked Kirkley, I said, what were your intentions? He said, we were going to kill him. We were going to kill him too. So they wait, and that's why it was so quiet when Mr. Hatton came home. And they're just laying and waiting for him to come inside the residence. He leaves. So at that point, they see him leave, and they're like, it's time to go. We need to go. So they get Janell, they get the change, the Kentwood water jug with the change. Again, change is just falling everywhere. That's where the evidence was, the blood droplets leading to the door, leading to the car. And then, of course, her slippers were on. That's the evidence where the indication of the slipper in the driveway, the slipper on the stairway area. And they place her in the back of the car. So now they have the change. They have Janell. They leave. And then while they're leaving, they pull over on the side of the road because Kirkley says, "Oh my gosh, my checkbook. The hatchet and the checkbook, I forgot it." And then at that point, they see Mr. Hatton drive by. So they're like, "Hey, go." So they leave. And then from there, that's when Kirkley drops Magee off, and then Kirkley goes to this isolated location in Marion County, and he drives in this barn area. And that's when he actually uses a car tag to make a shallow grave and bury her. And then there's some other players involved because each individual had a certain thing that they were going to do as far as involving the case. One was going to get rid of the gun. One was going to dispose of the body because they were planning on moving the body at another time period when everything kind of settled down. So, and then Adina kind of helped orchestrate this whole plan. So we begin making arrests, and we make 5 arrests. And then everyone was cooperative. And something I noticed about Keith Magee, and you would know this with law enforcement, when we were interrogating him, it was obvious that the initial part of it when he was lying, because he would ask, you would ask him a question and he would repeat the question back to you. And that's when he was trying to actually orchestrate something to tell a lie, and then later in the interrogation, that's when he actually confessed to everything. So everyone in that case actually confessed, because, it was to a point, though, it was no return. They had to confess. And
Well, and I want to touch on what you just said, but first, I want to recommend something to our listeners who are law enforcement, because we have all been watching it play out in real time for a long time now, that you've got an officer involved in a shooting. Your department has to figure out how to react. And behind the scenes, you know that your guy did everything right, but you've been advised not to talk about it. Here comes the media. Here come the influencers, the attorneys from out of state. Are you prepared? We're watching that happen in real time every week. And your turn is always right around the corner, no matter who you are. Boy, do I have a class for you. Check out this media management class we're having in August in Oxford. And if you've got questions, you can hit me up at the email address you see on that flyer. You can pause the video. You can come back to it. Or if you're listening on podcast, you can text 769-300-1521 for more information, and we'll get it back to you. Put your best foot forward, handle that crisis, learn how to handle the crisis before it ever happens. You train for every other way to save your officers' lives. Why not train to save their way of life as well? So hit me up. There's the class. It's in Oxford. No better food or nightlife anywhere in the state. You can talk to your chief, then call me. So back to what we were talking about. Jimmy, I just watched a video with some body language experts that work with law enforcement, and they were talking about how when you lie, your brain has to think about the truth, think about covering the truth, and think up a story. So you see that natural pause, and then they mentioned that as one of the first things that you'll do is some people will repeat the question to you.
Yeah, it's harder to tell a lie than it is to tell the truth, right? So, but Kirkley was very forthcoming. Quite honestly, he was a sociopath, and he was proud of his criminal activity. And there was really no violent history in his past other than more petty crime. But he told me that he actually broke into a house shortly before this happened in Marion County, and broke into a house middle of the night. Well, in the late evening of the night. He crawls through a window, and he crawls at the window, and he goes to the front portion of the house. And he says there's a family inside the residence. They're actually watching a movie. They're eating popcorn and watching a movie. He said there were kids, and he remembered a man and a woman in the house. And I said, well, what did you do? And he said, I pulled my gun out. And I said, why did you pull your gun out? He said, I thought about killing every one of them, but then I changed my mind, and I placed my gun back in my waistband, and I left. So that's the type of person we were dealing with.
Do you feel like after he had done this to Janell that there was a chance that he would become something else? Was this potentially the beginning?
I have no doubt. Yeah. I have no doubt. He was a monster. He really was. He was if you looked up the Webster's Dictionary of a killer, Stephen Kirkley was your guy. I'm telling you. He was calculated. He was very intelligent. He's one of those guys, he could become friends with you and be very deceitful, and you would think he's somebody that he's not, but he's a pure monster. Especially do something like that to a 63-year-old lady that's well thought of, pillar of society, and just the way that it's horrible, period, but just the actions he took during the course of this crime that he committed. But
and you said that was he going to take her head as a trophy? Or was it to keep? It wouldn't
It
seem
was
that it was to keep
it,
her
it
from.
made no that we could never get a direct answer. I mean, it's just it made no sense. He said he was referring to the bullets. That's what he was referring to, because they were
Yeah.
headshots.
Oh.
So I think he was concerned about a comparison to a gun and then linking that projectile to a gun that would ultimately link back to him.
What caliber was he
I
using?
think it was a 9mm.
Was she, when they put her in the car, was she dead?
No, she was alive. He was alive. There was
How long was she alive for?
she was alive. She was alive to the point that she was actually buried. There was indication of
Dirt in her lungs?
dirt in her lungs.
Wow.
So I mean, just brutal.
That's even worse.
Now I feel pretty confident she probably would have passed, but
Mhm.
I mean, who can do something like that? I mean, just terrible.
Well, when you said 6 hours in the barn, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't take 6 hours to cover somebody. It's
No, what
sad.
he did, he actually made a shallow grave to cover her up. So and he actually used a car tag to do this. You can imagine how tedious that would have been. And then at that point, then he covered her up, and then there was trash in the barn, so he moved all that trash
Okay.
into the horse stall to try to mask anybody ever trying to locate her. But the plan was for one of the other individuals to come back at a later time, and they were actually going to try to find another location to actually bury her.
Now, we talked about before we got started, because I was kind of fascinated, but these other individuals, as the case goes on, you find out a little bit more about what they're up to, and this tied to another case.
Yeah, absolutely. We have two Dixons. We have Larry Michael Dixon. He was 25 at the time. We have Robbie Dixon. He was in his 20s also, and I believe they were brothers, if I'm based on my memory. And Robbie Dixon, there was an individual that was actually missing during this time period, and he was believed to be an acquaintance with the Dixons. So he had been missing for a significant period of time. Well, Kirkley actually told me about Dixon committing the murder of Matthew. So from that point, I interviewed Dixon after we were talking about the Janell case, and he confessed to that murder. He actually took me to where his body was. There was another location in a creek area in Marion County.
What was that like? Because that has to be one of those moments that you are absolutely not anticipating.
It was, well, I mean, think about it. I mean, number one, the location where Janell's body was found, I'd previously worked a murder there. And Marion County is a good county. It just, these people were all tied into this. So
Yeah.
I had previously worked another homicide investigation at the location where Janell's body was actually found.
And you mean the actual address?
The actual address.
Wow.
Yes. So, and then of course we have Janell, and then now we have Dixon that's involved in the Janell Hatton murder, and he's committed a murder of an individual that's been missing. So during that time period, we recovered the body of this individual.
Yeah.
And what it was, they were actually friends, and they got into a fight, got into an argument, and he blunt force trauma to the head, and he put him in the back of a pickup truck, and he took him to a creek area and buried his body alongside the creek area.
Sara, I know that as a police officer, you've run across a lot of people, but I just keep thinking you've got this guy that does all this over a jar of change and is going to decapitate the lady over 9mm bullets, which it seems like there's a chance those are going to go through anyway sometimes. And then he's sitting there, and it sounds like he's just cold-bloodedly just telling them exactly what he did. And, oh, by the way, while you're at it, my buddy did some stuff too. Have you run across anybody like this before that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, the closest one I would think would be Samuel Young, who we've
Mhm.
talked about
Sure.
before on here. He sexually assaulted a girl, just a complete stranger, went to the back of her apartment, It was just a weird scene. And then from prison, just orchestrated a whole break-in. And it's a long, complicated story, but he would be the one that I would think. But you do meet people like this, and thank goodness y'all got it early. He didn't think through, like he thought through the first 2 steps, but he didn't think through the next few. But getting into those people's houses with the kids watching the TV, that's everybody's worst nightmare.
It's terrifying.
That is
I know.
everybody's worst nightmare, because that could be anybody.
It could.
I mean, not everybody locks their doors, and you said it was a window that they probably hadn't even checked. I mean, and you've got your children at home, just a complete stranger coming into your house. And did you ever find out who that family
Marion
was?
County actually talked to them, and
so they know.
So I personally never talked to them, but Marion County
so they
did.
know who that. See, that's terrifying.
But
and
during that time period, they had no idea that had happened.
And
I
then
mean, that could be any
what
of
he
it.
did, and then what he did after. That's
Now, what's pretty interesting is that we've arrested all of these people, right? And they're awaiting trial, which they later pled, but they're awaiting trial. And now Hurricane Katrina comes. That's what, 2005. So everything's just in disarray at that point. I think the Marion Walthall Correctional Facility, they're having issues from the storm, obviously. Well, Kirkley and 2 others, they crawled through an air vent and leap over the fence. They get on the roof and they actually leap over the fence and they escape. So one was caught pretty quickly. The other one was caught within days. He was actually in Florida at a Red Cross. How they had the Red Cross
everything
station
set up for food
and helping people. He showed up at one of those, and there was law enforcement. He had to present identification, and then from there they identified who he was and took him into custody. Well, Kirkley is still at large. So, and we know what his capabilities are. And then he really had nothing to lose at that point. So it was an extensive manhunt. So we would get sightings of him, and we actually had some sightings of him in the Natchez area. So days are going by, right? So we have the U.S. Marshal Service attached to us as well, and all your surrounding states, all your cities, states. I mean, everybody knows about Stephen Kirkley. It's being broadcasted through the media. And so while the marshals are involved in this, I get a call one day. I get a call when this investigation is taking place. Now it's gone from the Janell Hatton murder investigation to, oh my gosh, who's this? Who else is he going to hurt while he's at large? I mean, we're talking about weeks. He was actually at large for a month. That's a long time. So I get a call from America's Most Wanted. I get a call from a producer that U.S. Marshals actually, because during that time period, it was John Walsh. It was very, very popular, the America's Most Wanted. So I get a call from a producer and like, hey, is this Herzog with NBI? And I'm like, yes, it is. And he's like, I was referred your number from the U.S. Marshal that was assisting us and want to talk about coming down to Mississippi and actually doing a reenactment of the case and then premiere Kirkley on this coming up Friday night. I think it was Friday night or Saturday night, one or the other. So I said, absolutely. So their crew actually came down to the Marion County area. We did a reenactment. Obviously, we couldn't disclose too much because it was still pending trial, right? So they do a reenactment, and then Doug Barnes, he was a Marion County investigator, and myself actually go to Washington, D.C. It was actually Baltimore, Maryland. It was right outside of D.C. where the studio was. They premiered the Stephen Kirkley case.
And let me tell you what a big deal that is, because I follow a lot of true crime. I shouldn't, but I do. And people called them trying to get on. Like, that is so unheard of that they called you. How
Yeah, well, what
It
was
was
unique about, and you have two separate time zones, so it actually shone twice, on the East Coast and the West Coast. So Kirkley, something unique about him, he had two teardrops under his eyes. So that was relayed to the public from America's Most Wanted. So I kid you not, we had tips that people saw him in an Atlanta Falcons football game. They saw him in Seattle, Washington. They saw him in Los Angeles. So every person in a grocery store, we were getting tips from all over the country that was almost impossible. So 3 days go by after the show. People were actually calling. They were very interested in this. And so 3 or 4 days later in Edinburgh, Texas, about 10 miles north of the Mexican border, this lady calls the local police department and she actually says, "Look, I watched America's Most Wanted this past weekend. There's a guy, he's using the payphone. There's a truck with a Mississippi tag, and I think that's him that was premiered on America's Most Wanted." So Edinburgh Police Department, they respond and they identify the truck. They run the truck first. They run the tag of the truck first. Comes back stolen out of the Natchez, Mississippi area. They confront him, and sure enough, it's Stephen Kirkley. So Stephen Kirkley was actually arrested without incident.
I would have expected him to want to go out in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, I think he was cornered at that point. I think he was tired because he had been running for so long. But he gave up. I mean, he was not armed at that particular point. But what he was actually trying to do, he was trying to call his mother and get a credit card number where he could go into Mexico. That was his plans, to go into disappear into Mexico.
I'm just so surprised he didn't carjack anybody or,
I am too.
kill
I am
somebody to
too.
live in their house
Very
for a
much
little
so.
bit.
Very
Like
much
that
so.
would be what
Yeah.
my fear would be when that happened.
Yeah, Kirkley, if he would have been desperate enough, I can assure you he would have done something like that or hurt something along the way. I have no doubt.
What was that like for you during that time? Did you sleep at all for that month?
No, I didn't sleep much. I didn't sleep much at all, but we didn't have time to sleep. Maybe a couple hours here and a couple hours there. But I mean, when an investigation is active like that, you can't. If it'll go cold. I mean, the first 24 to 48 hours are so critical as far as, and we're talking about a lady that, we don't know if she's alive or dead at this point. So it was very, very important for her safety to try to recover her. That's what we were hopeful for. We were hopeful that we could find her alive.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how this would have turned out had Eric and I in Marion County not found her body. I really don't. I mean, it was pure luck. It really was. It was divine intervention. That's what I say a lot. I
Yeah.
really believe that. But you're talking about just very good people. I mean, her family was just incredible people. So it was just tragic, very, very tragic situation.
I want to go back real quick with you not sleeping. Also, the Katrina of it all.
Yeah.
Because I remember Katrina. There, it was a mess. I know that people had blow-up mattresses at police departments and sheriff's departments because they were working 24/7 because of the gas issue
Well,
and no power. So
yeah.
you're already exhausted. Now there's a manhunt. Your communities are in shatters. I can't imagine how much more stressful that was.
Yeah, it was very stressful. I mean, we know, because this actually occurred in October of 2004.
Okay.
But, so we think we have the case resolved. We're just awaiting trial at this point. And then you get the call that Stephen Kirkley, and you know what he's very capable of doing, and now you get the call that he has escaped, and we have no idea where he is. So that was a game changer. That was a game changer. So it was very little sleep at that particular point. But, it reached a point we were running out of leads. We really didn't have a clue where he was. We were, early on in the manhunt, we were close because we were getting leads, but then the leads dissolved, and then we had no idea where he was. So at some point, he made it from there to Texas.
And sometimes I like to try and point things out for our listeners who, I think when we hear these stories, sometimes as civilians, we tend to gawk at them. We tend to just, oh, wow, that's a great story. But let me just say, there have been a couple of cases that I've covered where something like this has happened. I'm thinking particularly of one in Vicksburg, where you had a brutal killer get loose, somehow escape. And it's got to be how the guys that investigated Ted Bundy felt twice. So
Absolutely.
you have this situation where, you think you're fine, you think you did good police work, you think you're just waiting on trial, and then everything has to just grind to a sudden stop, and now all efforts are focused on this. That's not just theater. That is terrifying real life, and it's got to sit in your stomach.
Very frustrating. Very frustrating because, number one, you have this monster behind bars where he's supposed to be. So now he's escaped. Now you're concerned about the welfare of other people. You have no idea where he is. You just don't know. So it's very, very frustrating. Very frustrating. So that, you were asking me a little while ago about sleep. Who's going to sleep when you're at that level? Because, you're talking about extreme adrenaline at that point too, because, it's a matter of life or death. You don't know what this guy's capable of doing.
Well,
you know what he's capable of doing.
Yeah.
You just don't know what his intentions are.
And he's already shown that he has no qualm with children and
Right.
families that he has never met. He doesn't know. I
Right.
mean, and then a lady who was kind enough to his wife to offer a job. So strangers on the street are nothing to him. So then you have those people's lives, that you're constantly thinking of. If you don't catch them, you kind of feel a little bit of responsibility for the
Yeah,
public in
you
that.
do. And then, and on top of that, he's amped up. So he has nothing. He knows what the consequences are. So at this point, he really has nothing to lose, So that was very frustrating, and it was very concerning for all of law enforcement. Very concerning during that time period. But it was a capital murder case because you had kidnapping, you had murder, and robbery, just a multitude of various felony crimes. And the family agreed to, instead of going through the stress of a trial, they agreed to just for the district attorney to just offer him life without the possibility of parole. So Kirkley and both Keith Magee both agreed to that, and they are now serving their rest of their lives in Mississippi Penitentiary now.
Couldn't happen to a better guy.
Agree. I agree.
Well, to me, it's not really funny, but
Yeah.
for somebody that dished out death so quickly,
Mhm.
Very
to
much
try to
so.
avoid it like that, to be so scared of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That is good that the families didn't have to go through that. I'm sure that would be excruciating.
Very much so.
Sara, we have a comment from Jordan. Would you like to read it? You wrote a long one this time.
Yes, and sometimes I stutter, so
And
I
sometimes
will
he makes
try.
us cry.
I will try to read this the best that I can.
Okay.
I've long believed that while investigative skills can be taught, the qualities that define exceptional investigators are often innate, much like the belief that the best leaders are both born with certain traits that training can only refine. Now that you've led the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation and evaluated investigators throughout your career, has your experience reinforced or challenged that belief? And when you're assessing someone for investigative responsibilities, particularly from another division within DPS, what professional attributes or decision-making characteristics convince you that they have the capacity to lead a complex criminal investigation?
Well, first of all, that's a pretty good
It's a
question.
great
It
question.
always gives me tongue twisters.
Yeah.
I think, I obviously don't think I'm better than anybody else, but I can bring experience to MBI, so the new agents that actually come in, I can offer that. I've been there. I've been boots on the ground. I've done what they do, so I can offer, provide recommendations on different investigations. I'm very involved in investigations. One thing that I brought to the table is continuous training. That's something that our agents do. We trained. You reach a point as an investigator and you think you know everything, then it's probably time for you to do something else, quite honestly. But, as far as DPS, there are some fantastic officers within DPS because we have multiple law enforcement, and we work very, very closely together. So, what was the other question?
He wants to know, go up just a little bit so I can read it. He's long believed, and so have I, that investigative skills can be taught. The qualities that define exceptional investigators. Do you think that they're born or that they're made investigators?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that I think you're born to be in law enforcement at all. I think that God, and I mentioned this the last time I was on. I mean, I think God puts you in the places that you need to be. So, you know, reflecting back to me, if you would have told me I was going in law enforcement when I was in college, I probably would have laughed at you. But I always read, serial killer books and books about, crime and things of that nature. So I fell into that capacity. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's something that God directs you to do, but you also have to have a passion for doing this job because this is a very difficult job because you have to deal with, especially working violent crime, you have to learn that 99% of the population, they're good people. It's that 1%, 1 to 2% that you're actually chasing to protect the good people. So I think it's probably a little bit of both, quite honestly.
That's
Jordan, I hope I answered that question for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met a lot of great investigators that I absolutely admire, and sometimes I think, man, they were just like it just seems like some of them have, it's like a mix, the personality, the intelligence, the attention to detail where they can see. And some things I just don't know if they can be taught. Like myself included, I would love to be like this great investigator, but I see some of these guys and it's just natural. It's like a natural web and flow.
Yeah, it's natural. And then, something that, especially experienced investigators, they can always bring something different to the table. You may have one investigator, they're very good at search warrants, and you may have, paperwork, court-related type documents, and then you may have another one that's very good at talking to people in the community and obtaining information and developing confidential informants. So, a seasoned investigator, that's why it's always so good to have, especially on cold cases, it's always good to have someone with fresh eyes looking at something because they may have a different skill set than the other person may have, and then boom, they may end up solving the case by something that they saw that other investigators. But
It's
it
like
doesn't.
that with reporters too. There's investigative reporters that are great at FOIA requests and data and
Right.
that kind of thing. Me, I'm a person investigator. Like I
Right.
can work a source, but you tell me to sort through a data dump, and I'm like, call
Yeah.
CJ LeMaster.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and at Ridgeland, our detectives work so well together. I mean, they are all integral with each other, and they just work so smoothly. It's like they don't even have to tell each other who's going to do what. When something pops off and everybody is running out of the building, calls like that, they know their place. They know what they're going to do. It's already handled. It's already taken care of. So I guess it is how you put your team together
Well,
at MBI.
yeah, I mean, most of our teams, they work so much together, so they know practically everything about each other. So, when they go to a crime scene, I mean, it's pretty much almost automatic. This person's doing this person's doing that. So it kind of comes in sync. It's not like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. So it very smooth transition on working these investigations.
you say that, and I was thinking about different investigative teams that I've seen work. And of course, mentioned Tim Douglas beforehand, but literally one of the best I've ever seen was the group that worked the investigation on the Jessica Chambers
Yes.
case, because those guys, it was like they were one unit. And I don't just mean that like they were a team of guys. I mean,
Right.
it was almost like they were an organism.
Right,
They
right.
worked together so well. So great one today. Sara, do you have any closing thoughts?
that is just made for lifetime. I mean, you
Mhm.
know, if you had told this story and we didn't know that it had actually happened, I'd be like, "You're kidding!" Like that doesn't
Yeah, it's crazy.
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 happen. But I mean, you
Yeah,
could read that in a book
absolutely.
or
Yeah,
watch it on a Joe Kenda show.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just wild, and that happens in our backyard, and that there are people that really are truly,
hmm
truly evil out
right,
there. And I think that as normal people, normal citizens, you don't really see that. People don't think
right.
about that, and it can't happen to me. And lock your doors at night because people are evil, evil.
Yeah, I mean, and then again, I mean, they are, but you know, that's something you just have to be very careful. I mean, you need to go around thinking that everybody's bad because they're not, you
Right.
know, but there are people out there that will do harmful acts to for whatever reasons that is. So the key to it is just always be very, very aware of your surroundings, and if you go somewhere, let somebody know where you go.
I do think
For
you're
sure.
right. 99% of the population is good and means well. It's
Right.
just that 1%.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, what I want to end on is a couple of weeks ago, I sat down with a younger journalist and she was asking me questions about things I'd done in my career and things I'd learned about and that kind of thing. And I was explaining things to her. And at one point, she looked at me and she said, "So, we ask these people to do these things for us and then we crucify them for it." And I just want you to think about that. Think about the evil that's out there. Think about the people that stand in the gap, the ones that track down the bad guys like this. You may never hear that story if you don't hear it somewhere like this, because they pled guilty. So it was never in court. It was never covered, wall to wall coverage like you would see in other things. So just know that that goes on out there. And when you decide how you feel about a particular story in the news, just know that we ask these people to do this for us. And maybe we shouldn't crucify them for it sometimes. So that's what we've got. Thank you to ADSI and Southern Connection for being our sponsors. We went ahead and skipped the commercials this time.
We'll have that audio fixed next week. I
Yeah.
apologize, guys.
Yeah, we have little glitches sometimes.
It's been a crazy afternoon, I'll tell you.
It has been a crazy afternoon. So thank you guys for joining us. Let our sponsors know that you love it. Sign up for my class, and we'll see you next week.